For about 200,000 years, Homo sapiens have been here. Plus or minus 50,000 years. All of that's guesswork. So don't take that too literally. And the point of coming here and logging on to a human is just so that you get meaningful choices that you get to make that are choices between love and fear. So you come here and do that. And if you look at the growth that we've had, growth, by that I mean spiritual growth, growth in becoming love and letting go of fear, you'll see that, out of the 200,000 years, you got probably about 190,000 of it where there wasn't much change. So if this is the change, this is how much we get toward love on this axis, and this is time, then it's just been kind of low. This is not a graduate school or a high school or anything. This is daycare for budding individuated units of consciousness, and it's been low, and it's just been like this, but it's not much change. Well, now you go to about, 1,000 years ago, and you see there were some upticks. There were some things that were created like republics where people got together and made choices together and had looked out for each other, but they also fight with their neighbors and other things. So you see it ticks up a little bit. And you look 500 years ago, look at the way the world was. 500 years ago, life was cheap. People in charge could just take somebody who was on the bottom and kill them just for fun if they wanted to, and there was no problem with that. And now, in the last 500 years, we've gone up in just 500 years. We've done more growth than we did in that 190,000 years. Well, that's because the more you learn, the easier it is to learn more. Learning accelerates. So you learn, and you get to this point where it starts to go up, and that's what it does. It goes very, very slow, but it accelerates, and you're slowly accelerating, and you get to the knee of the curve, and then it goes really fast. We are right here on that knee of the curve where it's starting to do this. That's called the knee of the curve in math, where before it really shoots up, but it's just starting to ramp up seriously. That's where we are now. We're on that knee of the curve. For the first time in the human history, we have the possibility of taking some big steps spiritually that we've never been able to do before. Before, let's say in the time of Buddha, you could get up on a soapbox and maybe 50 or 60 people could hear you if you had a loud voice, and that was it. Well, that spreads very slowly, and all the religions always end up in the margins. They're not mainstream. And where they have been mainstream in history, they've usually also been kind of abusive. This is what everybody must do or else. So, yes, we're gaining. We're in that point, and the technology is speeding up. Change is speeding up, and whenever you have change that happens quickly, you have turmoil. You have dysfunction. It causes a lot of problems, and some people will suffer and have problems because of it, but it takes that. If you have change over a long period of time, it's usually smooth and easy. Look at the Industrial Revolution. We started that, and it was abusive. We'd go to China and grab people and throw them in boats to come over and work on the railroads. We'd chain children to their machine to make sure they would come back in the morning. We did all kinds of abusive things. But eventually we got over all that, and all that was illegal and it couldn't be done anymore. So it got better and better and better over time. But it took about 150 years, Industrial Revolutions, about 150 years ago. And there's a lot of lessons we didn't learn. We did learn not to chain children to machines and not to Shanghai, people to work on the railroads. But we didn't learn to love. We didn't learn to care. Because we are a materialist culture, materialism comes with an ethic. It's embedded in materialism. If you're a materialist, then the ethic is control, power, force. That world's out there just for you to take it and own it and do what you want with it. I'm going to grab these resources and now I'll sell them to everybody else because they're mine. That's materialism. Material is just there to be exploited. And guess what? So is everybody else in the world. They're just there to be exploited. That's the idea of materialism. Material world, you exploit what you can, including other people. So with that as the basic ethic of materialism, and materialism being a fundamental belief of our culture, then what you see in the news and you look out the window is control, power, force. And what represents control, power, force? Money. Money creates control, power, and force. So money is the thing. That's the big thing that matters here, because control, power, force is our ethic. Well, if you want to change that, you have to change the ethic. As long as you have that ethic, you're going to get that result. So you change things and you make the ethic of caring, sharing, cooperation, all of those things leading toward becoming love. Now, the ethic there is to be helpful, to share, float everybody's boat. Everybody, gets clean water and food to eat and a house to live in, because we can afford it. We've got plenty of production that everybody could be doing all right, but we choose not to do that. We choose to hoard it and use it for ourselves, because we're still very self-centered. We're not very grown up. So where are we going? Now we're in the information age. And you've heard people talk about things change on internet time. Well, the reason things move more quickly now is because it's all about information. Now somebody can go up on the internet and 1 billion people can get that message in an hour, or at least in a day if they're asleep in some other part of the world where it's nighttime. You can get to lots of people. Couldn't do that before. Soapbox just wasn't that good. With that kind of communication available, then the ability to share ideas, create ideas and have them spread is a capability that's put human race for the first time, ability to make big steps. If you can just show people that love really is the answer, and that really is why we're here. And besides that, hey, look, you get a better physics that explains physics better. And hey, look, you get an understanding about why you're unhappy, because you've got fear, you've got ego, you've got beliefs. That's why you're unhappy. So it explains things to people, but it's based on an ethic of love and caring. And if you get people to buy into that, to say, yeah, that sounds better than what we've got. And right now, if you did a survey among the 9 billion of us that are here and said, do you think things are going really well, or do you think it sucks out there and we really need to do better? What we've got now is dysfunctional. You probably get 80 or 90% would say it's dysfunctional, but I don't know how to change it. I don't know what to surpass, to replace it with. Well, those ideas have to get in the mainstream, and I think they will, and that's going to be the biggest accelerator of change. And the only way that these ideas can get into the mainstream is that the high priests of Western culture agree with them, pick them up, and say,
scientists.
The scientists. Yes, the high priests are the people who tell everybody else what to believe, because everybody else doesn't do their own homework, doesn't research, doesn't dig into things. But they depend on the high priests to tell them what to believe. Those are now the scientists. And I think the scientists are getting close to seeing that, because it's just better physics. It solves their problems and doesn't give them any additional problems, doesn't raise any, new issues. So it just solves problems. So it's better. I think the truth is not fragile. It'll always float to the top, but sometimes it takes time, because it's got to get past beliefs, and it's a huge paradigm shift to get there, but eventually it'll get there. And when it does, and the scientists say, yes, this is correct, this is a virtual reality, love is the point, lowering entropy is the point. And lowering entropy is obvious to anybody who thinks about it, is helping, creating, sharing. That's what is positive. And grabbing and being selfish and using people for your own ends, that's very high entropy, creates a lot of negativity. So it's so obvious, and it's a better physics, that when the scientists agree that this is a better science, that will change a sea state, because then a lot of people, billions of people, will see it and believe it. It'll be true. And all you need is 10% of those people to live it, and the other 90% will see how productive they are. how happy they are, how their lives are just, how lucky they are that everything falls at their feet just as they need it. And even if they're poor, they're happy. Life is good. And the other 90% wants that, and they will come to it very quickly. So you don't have to convince everybody. You just have to convince enough of a minority that other people notice. If you're not minority, it's 1/10,000th of a percent, nobody notices. But if it's 10%, everybody notices. So I'd say that within 3 decades, we ought to be to the point, kind of rounding that, starting to move up. But that's a lot of change in a very short amount of time, and it's going to be rough. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be rough. The negative side, those people that favor chaos, they're going to give it their best shot to keep as much chaos as they can. And the positive side will just have to endure that and go on, because most of the population of the world's looking for something positive, something that will, it makes more sense to them than control, power, and force. That's a terrible way to run a society, to run a bunch of people, is with control, power, and force. And I don't think it's a big argument to convince people of that. I mean, that's pretty obvious itself. So give them something else. And if the high priests say, yes, this is real, things will change very rapidly, and these ideas will go into the mainstream. When they get into the mainstream, give it another 2 decades, and there'll be a whole lot of people that will have affected their life in a positive way. I get hundreds of emails, every month that tell me, "Tom, you've changed my life. My relationships are better. I'm more effective at work," and so on, because the ideas work. You live your own life by most of these ideas, that I talk about. It's about love. It's about caring. It's not about grabbing and taking. And when you live that way, things work for you. Things work out. Stuff falls at your feet. Success comes looking for you rather than you have to go looking for it. So that is my plan, and that's what I think is in the future. But it won't be a smooth ride, because it's a lot of change in a very short period of time. 3 decades is a very short period of time for social change. But I'm seeing the signs of it everywhere. Seeing the signs of kind of the ship righting itself. People getting more interested in being positive, caring, sharing, being authentic. People looking, for who am I inside at the core? What's my authentic me? What does that look like if I'm not worried about controlling this and controlling that, and I'm constantly trying to manipulate the world? If I'm just me, what is that? And people are finding themselves. They're being natural. They're being who they are. This beard, I've had this beard since 1967. I've been wearing it continuously since 1967. During most of that time, I was the only person with a beard within probably 100 miles. Nobody wore beards then. That was scruffy and whatever. Today, I see probably 70% of all the males I pass by, they're growing hair on their face again. That's natural. That's just being who you are. You don't have to pretend to be somebody else. You don't have to pretend to be a boy. You can be a man. You can grow a beard. You can just be the way you are. And I see the ladies, the hair is long. They're more comfortable with being female. Female isn't a burden. It's a very positive way of life. So I see that changing, among the young people. I see a lot more interested in things about consciousness. So we're headed in a very positive direction, even if you look outside and say, oh, all this nastiness is going on. You have all this. Well, that's the last big gasp, the last hurrah of the control, power, force crew. And they're going all out, and they will, but they will fail. Now, how long will it take them to fail? I don't know. They could fail in, a decade or less, or it may be longer. But I know they will fail, and we will end up with a kinder, gentler, more functional place, because that is the direction of evolution. Evolution may be very slow. I mean, look at all that, hardly made any progress at all for hundreds of thousands of years, but it always chugs forward. It can have a setback. Oh, yeah, it can go back, but it collects itself and just starts chugging forward. That's evolution. Things happen, evolution adjusts, and it chugs forward. And the forward direction of evolution is that we become beings of love and caring. And we care very deeply about how everybody else is doing. And it matters to us that everybody feels like they have opportunity, not the chosen few who have all the money and all the control, power, and force, but everybody needs to be valuable to the society. Now, there's a lot of things have to happen. I'm just talking really top things. There's a lot of support and a lot of connection, a lot of infrastructure has to change in order to do that, but it will. It'll change. So I'm saying maybe 3 decades, we'll start coming out the other side to where you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Right now, you look down the tunnel, it just looks dark. But in about 3 decades, I think we'll see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that light will just be getting brighter and brighter.